My boyfriend brought me a special health tonic every night. When my snake of a co-worker stole it and drank it, I pretended I didn't see a thing. Soon after, she died, her body covered in pus. Because that tonic was made from the ashes of his one true love. The janitor was the one who found Tia's body. She stumbled into the dressing room, incoherently telling the manager about the horrific scene in the women's restroom. Covered in pus, her features distorted, her limbs twisted. Hearing those gruesome words come out of the janitor's mouth was like sharp needles stabbing at our nerves. We stood there listening, breaking out in a cold sweat. Even after years of working in clubs and seeing our share of messed up things, we'd never seen anyone die like that. And the victim was one of our own. Just last night, we were on stage singing together. Now she was lying dead in a bathroom stall. Terrified, we all looked at the manager, only to get a blunt order. Keep your mouth shut. The show goes on tonight. It made sense. The last thing a club wants is a death on the premises. The owners have connections, so this would definitely be swept under the rug. Everyone quickly went back to work, but my mind was a raging storm. Because Tia might have died in my place. My boyfriend, Julian, had been bringing me a health tonic at the club every night, rain or shine, since last month. But last week, a customer stopped me and whispered, "You're drinking soup made from ashes, wearing foundation mixed with ashes. You're turning into a corpse." At first, I just thought he was drunk and rambling. But that night, when I tasted the tonic carefully, I noticed a faint, strange flavor, like temple incense ash had blown into my mouth. It made me suspicious. I took a closer look at the foundation Julian had given me and saw it did have a coarse, gritty texture. Combined with the strange things I'd recently seen at the shrine in his villa, my suspicion grew. I decided I needed to test it on someone. That's when I thought of Tia, my co-worker who'd tried and failed to seduce my boyfriend, then resorted to stealing my things to spite me. Since you love to steal so much, I thought, let's see if this tonic and foundation can actually turn someone into a corpse. The next evening, I brought Julian into the dressing room when he arrived with the tonic, and made a huge show of our affection right in front of Tia. She was livid. Sure enough, while I was on stage for my set, she snuck over, drank my tonic, and then pretended she'd accidentally knocked the thermos over. She also helped herself to a generous amount of my foundation. She had no idea I was watching her on the security monitor, a smirk on my face. "So you like to steal, do you? Let's just wait and see what happens." I never thought she'd actually die. I decided I had to see Tia's body for myself. I needed to know, before the owner locked everything down, if the tonic and foundation were the real cause of death. Maybe that was supposed to be my fate in this relationship. I made an excuse and slipped out of the dressing room. The owner and the police hadn't arrived yet. The area around the restroom was temporarily blocked off by security. I caught the eye of the head of security and pulled him into a corner, telling him I wanted to take a look inside. He ran his hands over my body a few times and said, "One quick look, and then you come to the break room with me later tonight." His bloated body disgusted me. I flatly refused, but he blocked my way. "What, now that you've landed a rich guy, you're too good for me? The boss won't even let a fly in there. I'm only offering because I'm his cousin." Desperate, I reluctantly agreed. I pushed open the door to the women's restroom and walked to the stall where Tia had died. One glance was enough to make my hair stand on end. Her body lay on the floor, her hands frozen in a gesture of tearing at her clothes. Her legs were twisted at a bizarre angle, and her entire body was covered in tiny pustules, oozing a yellowish-brown fluid. The most terrifying part was her face. Her features were displaced and warped, almost as if they belonged to someone else. And that face, I'd never forget that face. In the secret chamber in Julian's villa, there was a memorial photo and an urn. The photo was of this exact face. Seeing it again sent a chill down my spine. I broke out in a cold sweat and turned to run. But as I turned, Tia's reflection appeared in the mirror on the wall. She was standing right behind me, her eyes rolled back, staring. The horrifying image sent a wave of pure terror through me. My legs went weak, and I stumbled backward. I instinctively put my hands out to catch myself, but they landed on something sticky and wet, Tia's festering corpse. My face was now right next to hers. At the same time, I heard the sound of a funeral dirge. I couldn't take the terrifying atmosphere anymore. I covered my face and screamed, "What's wrong with you?" The head of security shook me, and I snapped back to reality. It was all a hallucination. I was still standing in front of the body. There was no funeral music, just my phone ringing. I answered it. "Hey babe, I'm here with your health tonic. I met my boyfriend, Julian, right here at this live music venue. I'm a club singer, glamorous on stage, adored by the young guys who come to drink away their nights. Occasionally, some guy trying to pick me up would bring me flowers and gifts, claiming to be my biggest fan, giving me a taste of what it's like to be a star. But I knew the truth. I was just a club girl. When drink sales were down, I'd even have to sit with customers and push liquor. Any male manager could make my life hell, forcing me to strip off my clothes piece by piece just for his amusement. So my goal was crystal clear. Land a rich guy and get out of this life. And Julian was everything I could ever want in a sugar daddy. Rich, young, handsome, and exciting. I'd had my eye on him since the first time he came in to get drunk. I used every trick in the book to get his attention. He seemed interested in me too, always showering me with expensive gifts and tips. No matter how the other girls flirted or threw themselves at him, his eyes were always on me. Soon, we were together. Villas, yachts, international trips. He showed me what a respectable life looked like. What moved me the most was that he didn't care about my job. He'd make breakfast and pick me up after my shift ended late at night. And every night, he'd bring a homemade health tonic to help me stay well. He even promised me, "This isn't a transaction. I want to marry you next year." That's when my heart melted. I had developed real feelings for him. I made up my mind. I'd work one more month and then quit, grabbing onto this one chance at a good life that fate had thrown my way. But it didn't take long for me to notice something was wrong. I accidentally discovered that he was keeping a memorial photo and an urn for some girl in a small, hidden room in his villa. I was horrified, but I couldn't bear to lose this relationship and my comfortable new life. So instead of confronting him, I started investigating quietly. And now Tia was dead. So, does he really love me? What's his secret? Is he actually feeding me soup made from someone's ashes? My mind was a chaotic mess. I had no idea what to do. After forcing a smile and saying goodbye to Julian, who had just dropped off the tonic, I dialed the customer's number. "Hi Cole, this is Chloe. We need to talk about the ash soup." Cole came by late that night. He booked a private room and paid for my time for the rest of the night. It was the perfect excuse to get away from the head of security, who wouldn't leave me alone. When I entered the VIP booth, I took a good look at him. He was wearing old, worn-out clothes that looked years out of style. "You have 7 days left," he said, his first words a chilling pronouncement. "Then you'll become a corpse." I couldn't believe it. I told him to prove it. He handed me a mirror with a strange, intricate symbol on the back and told me to look at myself. I hesitated before taking it, but in that instant, I saw that the face in the mirror wasn't mine. It was the same face as Tia's corpse. It was her, the girl from the memorial photo. This bizarre face in the mirror mimicked my every move, right down to my terrified expression. I screamed and threw the mirror across the room. "That is your face now," he said calmly. "Only someone with a rare solar constitution, born on the same day, month, and year as the deceased, can withstand the 49-day ritual of corpse transformation. A normal person would die the first time they drank the ash soup." His eerie words made my scalp tingle. I sat frozen on the sofa as he slowly explained. There was, he said, a dark art that could bring the dead back to life. You had to find someone of the same gender, born on the exact same day as the deceased, who also possessed this solar constitution. Over 49 days, this person had to ingest the ashes in liquid form and apply them as a powder to their face. Their body would then transform into a perfect replica of the deceased. With a final soul-swapping ritual, the dead could take over the new body and be reborn. It was a lot to take in. I dropped out of middle school, so I'm not totally against the idea of ghosts and spirits, but this sounded completely insane. But now, with my boyfriend secretly worshipping a mysterious dead girl and Tia's gruesome death, all the evidence seemed to support his story. I was torn. I didn't know if I should trust Cole. After all, I had real feelings for Julian. Why are you helping me? I started probing for his motive. Nobody does anything for free. He had to have a reason. I need a girl with a solar constitution to help me with something. Think of it as a transaction. Seeing my hesitation, Cole performed another trick. He stuck a paper talisman to the glass window of the room. Instantly, the glass transformed into a large, shimmering mirror. And in that mirror I saw it. There was a female ghost riding on my back. She was thin, dressed in white, with her legs draped over my shoulders and long hair falling to my waist. Her hands were cradling my face, her head bowed as she looked down at me, as if with insatiable greed. I shot up from my seat, trying to push her away, but my hands passed through empty air. The only thing I could feel was a faint, icy chill on my neck, confirming her presence. She felt my movement and slowly raised her head, looking at me from the mirror. It was a ghastly, pale face. Her eyes were rolled back, streaming tears of blood, but her lips were a seductive, vibrant red. She saw my fear and gave me a sinister, chilling smile. Rip. Just then, Cole tore the talisman off the window, and everything returned to normal. Don't be afraid, he said. It's just a spirit attachment. She has no real consciousness yet. She can't hurt you until the 49 days are up. I collapsed back onto the sofa, gasping for air to calm myself. Deal, I said, agreeing to work with him. Even though I wasn't fully convinced and knew street magicians could use tech to create illusions, Tia's death was real. I had to be prepared, just in case Julian was some kind of psycho. Besides, Cole wasn't asking for any money. Cole had the room booked until morning, so he'd paid for my whole night. Seeing how shaken and exhausted I was, he told me to rest on the sofa in the booth while he prepared some items to protect me. My gut told me he was one of the good guys, so I turned my back to him and fell asleep on the sofa. But I didn't sleep well. I dreamt of Tia's festering corpse chasing me, demanding revenge. A gurgling sound came from her throat, as if she was trying to say I'd killed her on purpose. And that female ghost wouldn't leave me alone. I felt a deep chill all over my body, as if she were pressed right against me. They morphed into all sorts of terrifying shapes, hunting me down. Then Julian appeared in the dream. He dragged me to the girls' memorial altar and started strangling me. I couldn't breathe, and all the while, she was smiling sinisterly from inside the photo frame. I woke up with a jolt, choking. She's starting to affect your mind. Cole walked over and handed me a dragon bone pendant. He said it would calm my nerves and ward off evil. He then went over the talismans and ritual tools he'd prepared, explaining how to use them over the next few days. As he was leaving, he warned me to follow his instructions exactly and hold out until the 7th day. I couldn't run away, or the ghost attached to me would kill me instantly. And most importantly, I couldn't let Julian know I'd figured everything out, or he'd kill me and force the soul swap. On the 7th day, he said he would bring his grandmother to save me. The next morning, Julian came to pick me up as usual. As the other girls watched with envy, I walked reluctantly to his car, my feet heavy with dread. Who would want to go home with a guy who keeps a memorial shrine to a strange girl in his house? Sweetheart, did you drink your tonic last night? Julian asked gently. I just nodded, afraid to look him in the eye. I was terrified he'd see the anxiety and suspicion on my face. If you don't like it, just tell me. I can try to improve the recipe, but you have to drink it. Working nights, you need the nourishment. I muttered some vague reply. My head felt groggy, and I drifted off to sleep again. Maybe it was the dragon bone pendant, but this time, I slept soundly. When I woke up, we were already at the villa. I clutched my purse tightly and hurried out of the car toward the bedroom. Babe, why aren't you letting me carry your bag today? Julian asked from behind me, confused. He usually carried my bag for me, treating me like a princess. But today, my bag was filled with talismans and magical artifacts. If he saw them, he'd probably kill me on the spot. I was starting to suspect he wasn't even human. He could probably turn into a bleeding, 7-orifice ghost at any moment. Feeling him catching up, I said I was exhausted and just wanted to sleep, then walked faster to keep him from getting the bag. But he seemed to notice my purse was bulkier than usual and kept pursuing me. My heart pounded in my chest, and my mind raced, trying to think of a way out. Suddenly, I realized my hair was down. I told him I'd left my hair clip in the car and asked him to go get it. I prayed he'd fall for it. Babe, you're always so forgetful, he teased, and it sounded like he was actually turning back to go get it. I let out a long sigh of relief. But in the next second, a vicious voice whispered right next to my ear. I'm going to kill you. Julian's low voice, mixed with a sharp exhale, hit the back of my ear. My hair stood on end. I yelped and jumped to the side. My arm instinctively clamped down on my purse. Ha ha ha, I'm just kidding, Julian explained, laughing. Heard someone died at your club. Must have scared you, huh? My anxiety flared up again. He knew about Tia? I pinched him hard and started fishing for information. How did you know about that? The boss put a lid on it. We don't even know the details. Hearing me say that, he proudly boasted about his wide network of contacts, saying a friend in the police department told him some drunk had died of an overdose in the bathroom. Watching him so earnestly repeat a baseless rumor, I finally let out a breath. The knot in my stomach slowly loosened. I lied and said I was too tired, then locked my purse in my suitcase and pretended to go to sleep. But the moment my head hit the pillow, I was out. I woke up at 6 p.m. By this time, Julian should have been at his studio. He usually worked in the afternoons and evenings. I planned to set up the artifacts as Cole had instructed, but then I heard a soft rustling sound from outside the door, like a long gauze skirt dragging on the floor. Babe, you didn't go to the studio? I called out to Julian, but there was no reply. The villa, located at the foot of a mountain, was eerily quiet. Rustle, rustle, the sound came again. I didn't dare go out. I called Julian, and he confirmed he was at his studio. I mentioned the rustling sound in the house, but he just said I was being paranoid, that it was probably just the wind blowing the curtains. After a few brief words of comfort, he hung up. But I distinctly remembered we had replaced all the curtains in the house with blinds before the summer. There was no way a curtain could be dragging on the floor. Besides, the bedroom window was open, and there wasn't a breath of wind outside. As I debated whether to go out and look, a notification popped up on my phone. It was an alert from the security camera. A stranger's face and movement had been detected in the living room. I quickly opened the live feed. A facial recognition box was moving around the screen, but there was no one in the video. The tracking box was completely empty. I suddenly remembered what Cole had told me last night. You have a spirit attached to you. It was the female ghost. She had followed me home. The spectral image Cole had shown me flashed in my mind, and I dove back under the covers in terror. Rustle, rustle. The sound came again. Through the blankets, I could hear it getting closer, as if it was now inside the bedroom. Then I felt an icy touch on my left ankle, like something had grabbed it. I realized my left foot was hanging off the side of the bed. A ghost. I shot up from the bed, ripped the covers off, and threw them in that direction. But the blankets landed on nothing. There was nothing at the foot of the bed. The rustling sound was gone, and the room was silent again. I remembered Cole saying that as long as I didn't run, the ghost wouldn't harm me before the 49 days were up. Whatever. She's just trying to scare me, I muttered, trying to build up my courage. But being in an empty villa at the foot of a mountain with a ghost clinging to me was still terrifying. I had to hurry and set up the artifacts as Cole instructed. I unplugged the villa's security system and took out the talismans and tools. Cole had specifically told me to stick the talismans on the back of furniture to keep Julian from finding them. I started rummaging through the room. The sofa, the cabinets, the refrigerator. I moved them one by one, breaking into a sweat. As I sat on the floor to rest, I heard something fall in a downstairs bedroom. Was it that room that was always locked? Julian had told me his elderly relatives used to live in it before they died, and it was filled with bad luck, so he kept it locked. But ever since I found the secret shrine in the basement, I'd been curious about this room I'd never been in. Besides, Cole had specifically warned me not to miss a single room when placing the talismans. I gathered my courage and decided to investigate. I pressed my ear against the door for a moment, but all I could hear was the frantic pounding of my own heart. I tentatively tried the handle, and the door opened. It had always been locked before. I slowly pushed the door open, and a rotten smell wafted out. The room must have been locked for a long time. It was dark inside. I flipped on the light. A delicate, white-themed bedroom appeared before me. This was clearly not an old person's room. It was a girl's bedroom, and a very feminine one at that. So Julian had lied to me. I looked around. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. What had fallen was a set of photo albums, which must have dropped from the top of a cluttered wardrobe. I picked up an album and started flipping through it. The wooden cover had a row of carved-out words. Julian Serena, together forever. It was the girl from the memorial photo. Her name was Serena. The album was filled with intimate pictures of her and Julian. So the person in the secret shrine was Julian's long-lost love. His heart wasn't with me at all. That bastard. That liar. A wave of nausea washed over me. So much for his one true love. The woman is dead, and he still keeps her picture. Damn you, Julian. If I wasn't afraid of being murdered, I would have smashed this album over his head. It was clear now. Julian didn't love me. It was all an act. What Cole said about the soul-swapping ritual had to be the truth. I put the album down and gently moved the wardrobe to stick a talisman behind it. But as I did, I saw a small skeleton wedged behind the cabinet. The tiny bones. Was it an infant's skeleton? I was shocked. I clutched my chest and looked again. The skeleton wasn't human. It was a cat. Poor little thing. It must have gotten stuck behind the cabinet years ago and died, its body turning to bone. I've always loved cats. I found a bag and carefully collected the skeleton, planning to bury it in the yard later. After putting the cabinet back, I moved on to the vanity mirror. Cole had said to put a talisman on the back of every mirror in the house. I went to the vanity. It was mostly covered with skincare products, with only a few makeup items. It seemed Serena was a natural beauty type. Combined with the violin in the room and the photos in the album, I pictured a gentle, graceful music student. It was strange. She looked nothing like the female ghost Cole had shown me that night. Even the shape of her face was different. Do people's ghosts get uglier when they die? Then it hit me. She and Julian were both artists. I, a club singer, was a completely different type of person. Of course Julian didn't like me. He must have wanted something from me. Was it really to bring her back to life? As I was taking apart the hinged vanity mirror, I noticed something strange. Neither side of the mirror was reflecting my image. Everything else in the room was reflected, but I wasn't there. Could it be an underworld mirror? My grandmother used to tell me about a type of mirror from the underworld that only reflected ghosts, not the living. If you put a talisman on it, you could see and even talk to ghosts. I was thrilled. This was exactly what I needed right now. I stuck a talisman on the back and scanned the room with it, then took it into the living room and did the same. I didn't see anything. Was there no ghost haunting me? Pushing my curiosity aside, I figured Julian would be back soon. I slipped the smaller half of the hinged mirror into my pocket and put the larger half back on the vanity. The moment I reattached the mirror, a black and white figure appeared in it, hanging its head and staring at me with rolled back eyes. A ghost. After leaving that horrifying bedroom, I took a few deep breaths to calm down, then went to the garden to bury some of the artifacts. All that was left was the cat skeleton. I planned to bury it under a tree in the corner of the yard. But I hadn't been digging for long when I hit something hard. Curious, I dug deeper and unearthed a human skull. In the moonlight, its two empty eye sockets seemed to be staring right at me. It was terrifying. A body buried under the tree. What kind of monster was Julian? A chill ran down my spine. This scumbag had killed someone, and I was his next target. I replayed our entire relationship in my head. He had seen right through my materialistic ambitions from the start, showering me with money and charming me with small gestures. He was a pro. He'd even tricked me into falling for him. I deserved this. I tried to land a sugar daddy and ended up with a murderer. I was terrified, unsure how I was going to face this monster tonight. And I had just seen Serena's ghost with my own eyes in the underworld mirror. The soul-swapping ritual was real. Everything that had happened made my heart tremble. But I couldn't run. Not yet. I had to wait 7 days for Cole to bring his grandmother to save me. I guess I'll just have to take it one step at a time, I thought. That's all I can do. I buried the cat bones and as I was filling the hole, I found a metal locket, the kind given to children for protection. It must have belonged to the person who was buried here. I prayed that the soul of this person would find peace in the afterlife, and buried the locket back in the ground. After finishing, I looked around. The only place left to place a talisman was the basement. The secret room with Serena's memorial photo and urn was also in the basement. As the sky turned completely dark, I felt a surge of fear. I didn't want to go down there. But Julian would be back in about an hour and a half, and I had to finish. Gritting my teeth, I pulled out the small piece of the underworld mirror and, holding it in front of me, headed for the basement. Julian had renovated the basement to look like a bar. We had even drunk and made love down there before. But the thought that Serena's memorial altar was just on the other side of a door made my stomach turn. I quickly placed the talismans outside, then hesitated at the door to the small shrine room. Should I go in? I was so scared. But Cole had specifically told me that the ghost was anchored to the urn in that room. I had to replace the ashes with the temple incense he'd given me and set up a soul-destroying formation with the artifacts. Only then could we be sure the ghost would be completely eliminated in 7 days. With no soul, no one could perform a soul swap on me. And after taking the spiritual medicine he gave me for a few days, the deathly aura around me would dissipate, and I'd return to normal. This is the last step. To hell with the ghosts. I steeled myself and opened the door. The room was just as terrifying as I had imagined. On the wall directly in front of me hung a huge white frame containing Serena's memorial photo. On the altar sat a small, red coffin, looking sinister in the dim candlelight. It held her ashes. Next to it was a wooden memorial tablet engraved with the words, "To my wife Serena." Seeing this, I was both terrified and furious. What a disgusting liar. They were never married, they just dated. My wife. Did her family even agree to this? Besides, if you're so hung up on your ex, why don't you just follow her to the underworld? Why drag me into this? For your twisted sense of love. You make me drink your dead girlfriend's ashes and smear them on my face every night. You're insane. You bastard. I hope you're reincarnated as a pig in your next life. As I was cursing him in my head and hiding the artifacts, the door creaked and swung shut on its own. The eternal flame on the altar flickered and went out, plunging the room into darkness. Did the ghost blow it out? I yelped and dove under the table, curling into a ball and hugging my knees. A chilling sensation spread over my body. Was the ghost touching me? Was she admiring her new body? Terrified, I buried my head between my knees, my body trembling slightly. The coldness underneath me was especially strong, and it felt wet and sticky. It was incredibly eerie. Was I sitting on a ghost? Or on a rotting corpse? I couldn't just sit here. I had to get out. I turned on my phone's flashlight. The intense beam revealed a horrifying scene. I was sitting in a pool of blood. Was I bleeding? Was I dying? Or was there a freshly killed body nearby? I shone the light around and saw that I had knocked over a small basin that had been filled with blood. Next to the basin was a gleaming, sharp knife, covered in bloodstains. Is this where Julian killed people? Were they other girls like me? Overwhelmed with horror, I scrambled to my feet to run. But just then, someone knocked on the door from the outside. Knock, knock, knock. I instantly grabbed the knife from the floor. Chloe, is that you in there? Julian's familiar, bubbly voice now felt like a blade stabbing at my frayed nerves. He was home earlier than usual. Did he find out? Is it over? Are we done pretending? Cole's warning flashed in my mind. Don't let him find out, or he'll kill you and force the soul swap. I tried to calm myself, gripping the knife tightly, my mind racing to find a way to survive. Beg for mercy? Play the victim? Neither would work. A psycho who worships his dead ex-girlfriend isn't capable of empathy. My only chance was to fight for my life. It was either him or me. I held my breath, my mind made up. I've worked in clubs for years, I've seen it all. This time, I'm fighting for my life. I crept over to the side of the door, squatting down. My plan was to stab him in the stomach the moment he opened the door and stepped inside. As expected, when I didn't answer, he slowly opened the door. Now, I lunged at him with the knife. He was startled but reacted quickly, catching the blade with both hands. I tried to pull the knife back for another strike, but he easily grabbed my arm. With a twist of my wrist, he knocked the knife from my hand and threw me to the ground. I was shocked. He knew martial arts. It was over. I was dead for sure. I cursed my rotten luck. What did I do to deserve this? I had to drop out of school because we had no money, and I finally managed to support myself by singing in clubs. And now I was going to die at the hands of a psycho, after drinking his ex-girlfriend's ashes, just so she could be reborn in my body. This damn fate was so unfair. But Julian didn't kill me. Instead, he sat down beside me, panting heavily. So you found out. He looked at me and began to explain, his tone filled with sincerity, not the snarl of a cornered villain. It seemed he didn't want to fight. He was going to spin another story. I gave up resisting and decided to play along, hoping to buy myself some time. I saw that bedroom too. You owe me an explanation, I said, sitting up and pretending to be confrontational. That was my ex-girlfriend, but it's not what you think. I did love her very much, but she passed away 5 years ago. I keep her shrine to ward off a vengeful spirit that's trying to kill me. I feigned confusion. A vengeful spirit? I let him talk, listening as he recounted the story of his past. Julian and Serena had been college sweethearts, but a psycho named Cole was obsessed with Serena. Cole's grandmother was a shaman who had taught him all sorts of mystical arts and dark magic from a young age. He became obsessed with these things, and his mind grew twisted. He determined that Serena possessed a rare lunar body, and if she remained a virgin and conceived a child with his solar body, they could produce a powerful lineage of mystics. Their child might even be born with the legendary ability to see ghosts. So Cole relentlessly pursued Serena, even stalking and spying on her, which terrified her into moving into Julian's villa for safety. But when Cole found out they were living together, his hatred for them grew. He felt they had ruined his grand plan and started spreading rumors about them at school. He even publicly threatened to kill them both. Then one night when Julian wasn't home, something strange happened. Serena, as if possessed, hanged herself in the bedroom. Julian and the police couldn't find any evidence of foul play, so her death was ruled a suicide. Around that same time, Cole quietly dropped out of school and vanished. For a year after that, I was a wreck, Julian continued. I kept seeing shadows, and I'd even find myself inexplicably self-harming, stabbing myself with knives. Friends and family told me to sell the house, but I couldn't bear to. I wanted to keep Serena's room just as it was. So I hired a Taoist priest. He told me Serena was killed by dark magic, and her Yanqi resentment was so strong that her ghost was still in the house. She had become a vengeful spirit. He said I had to set up an altar and worship her as my wife for 4 years to appease her, and then perform a ritual to help her pass on. The 4 years are almost up. We were planning the final ritual in 7 days. I had finally moved on and started dating you. I was going to quietly get rid of everything in the shrine and that bedroom after the ritual. I never thought you'd find it. If you can't accept this, we can break up. I'm so sorry. Julian knelt on the floor, his hands covering his face as he sobbed through his tragic story. His explanation cleared up some of my questions, but I couldn't fully trust him. His description of Cole didn't seem that extreme. And he never mentioned the human skull buried under the tree. He was still hiding a lot. But I didn't dare press him further. For now, I had to maintain this fragile peace and play along, one step at a time. We went upstairs and bandaged his hands together. As we did, he brought up Cole again, asking if I had seen him before. I told him the truth, that I had just met him last night. But I left out the part about the talismans and the ritual formations. Right now, I couldn't trust either of them. My only option was to play them against each other to figure out the truth. What did you say? You saw him last night. Julian was stunned. He grabbed my shoulders. His eyes widened in terror. That's impossible. You couldn't have seen him. He's dead. Unless you saw a ghost. To get more information, I told him what Cole had said about the ash soup, the soul swap, and Tia's death. Julian immediately cursed Cole, calling him a liar. He dragged me to the kitchen and pointed to the burnt bottom of a pot, explaining that he was bad at controlling the heat and always scorched the ingredients when he made soup. Then he looked up the foundation online, showing me it was a version a friend had bought for him abroad, with a different texture from the domestic one. He even called Serena's parents on the spot to prove that her body had indeed gone missing after her death. The small coffin, he explained, didn't contain her ashes but the ashes of her burnt clothes. Listen to me. Julian grabbed my shoulders, his voice deadly serious. I saw no trace of deception in his eyes. Cole is a vengeful spirit too. He's getting close to you so he can use your body to resurrect Serena. We have to lure him to the villa and exorcise them both. Otherwise, none of us will survive. So was Cole really a ghost? Before I could sort through my thoughts, Julian laid out his plan. I would trick Cole into coming to the villa, where he would be trapped by a powerful soul-trapping ward. Then, they would set up an altar and use a spirit-summoning banner to exorcise both ghosts at once. I pretended to agree and sent Cole a message in front of him, asking to meet that night. Then I secretly bought a bus ticket to leave town that very night. I couldn't take this bizarre, twisted ordeal any longer. Cole replied quickly. Same room as last time, 1 a.m. He'd be waiting. That night, with an earpiece connecting me to Julian, I went alone to Cole's private room. This time, I watched him carefully and noticed something strange. The sofa in the room was incredibly plush, even a small person like me would sink into it. But when Cole sat down, the cushion didn't depress at all. It was as if he were floating just above it. Was I really sitting across from a ghost? But under the light, he still cast a shadow, which wasn't very ghost-like. I clutched the pendant on my chest, trying to appear calm and relaxed as I recited the script Julian was feeding me through the earpiece. He's having a priest come to the house the day after tomorrow to check his fortune. Cole was clearly shocked by what I said. He took a moment to compose himself, then said gravely, "He's lying to you. He's not inviting a priest for good fortune. He must have sensed something is wrong. He's going to try to force the soul swap. We can't wait for my grandmother. I'm coming to save you tomorrow." I could feel the urgency in his voice. He was clearly worried about a priest coming to the villa, though I didn't know why. But my deception had worked. After reassuring him that all the artifacts and talismans were in place, I watched him leave. As he stood up, I used both my small compact mirror and the underworld mirror to look at him. What I saw made my scalp crawl. Only the underworld mirror showed his reflection, a black and white image. He really was a ghost. And there was a female ghost in a red dress clinging to his back. I held my breath until he was out the door, then took a sharp gasp of air to steady myself. Neither Cole nor Julian was normal. I didn't know what they wanted, but I was the solar body they were both after, which meant my fate wouldn't be good. My only choice was to escape the city and hide. I snuck to the changing room, put on a fresh set of clothes, a baseball cap, and sunglasses, and slipped out the back door of the club. I flagged down a taxi on the street and told the driver to take me to the airport. The moment I got in, the tension in my body finally began to ease. I leaned back in my seat and closed my eyes, hoping to get some rest. As I drifted off, the car started to get cold. I asked the driver to turn off the AC, but after a while, it only got colder. I opened my eyes to remind the driver again, but what I saw shocked me. Weren't we on the road back to the villa? The car's headlights were off, and we were driving in complete darkness down a narrow path surrounded by trees and flowers. We were almost at the foot of the mountain. Before I could question it, a soft female voice came from the front seat. "Are you trying to run away?" I looked up. The ghost in the red dress was sitting in the driver's seat. She stretched her neck and snapped her head around to face me. A pale, blood-streaked face with rolled-back eyes was almost touching mine. I scrambled to the side, yanking at the door lock, but it was jammed. I pounded on the window, but it was useless. In that instant, Cole's face appeared on the other side of the glass. Trapped between two ghostly faces, I thought my heart would burst. I did the only thing I could think of. I buried my head in my lap like an ostrich and waited for the two ghosts to finish me. After a moment, I felt a cold touch on my neck, followed by Cole's voice. "Look how scared you are. I never said I was human. I'm actually a Reaper from the underworld, which is why you can see me." Hearing the word Reaper eased my fear slightly. At least he was an official entity from the underworld. He probably wouldn't kill me. But I didn't fully trust his ghostly words. The last few days had constantly shattered my understanding of reality. Why are you taking me back to the villa? I asked weakly, not daring to look up. I quickly sent a text to Julian. Cole's here early. Cole explained that with the help of the talismans and artifacts I had placed, he could send Serena's soul to the underworld for reincarnation tonight. He had lied about waiting 7 days because his own powers were limited, and he wanted his grandmother there as backup. But now that Julian was bringing a priest, he was afraid his arrangements would be discovered. So he was going to risk doing it alone tonight. The car slowly stopped outside the villa. Cole told me to go inside alone. He needed to test if the talismans I had placed had broken the soul-trapping ward. Since he was also a spirit, the ward would trap him. My legs felt like jelly as I got out of the car. The urge to run was overwhelming. But when I looked back, the female ghost was standing by the car, watching me. I had no choice but to go back to the villa. A murderous boyfriend in front of me, ghosts haunting me from behind. I must have had 8 lifetimes of bad luck to end up in this mess. Babe, comein. Everything is ready. Julian greeted me at the door with an expectant look on his face, then led me down to the basement. A spirit summoning banner had been erected, and a yin-yang altar was already in place. He handed me a large veil, saying it would make me invisible to ghosts and protect me from being accidentally harmed. As I hesitated, Julian put on a Taoist robe himself, sat on a cushion, and picked up a book of scriptures. A moment later, the room filled with a strange light. Mysterious runes flowed from the banner and swirled around us, as if something had been activated. Ha ha ha, you fell for it, Cole. Now you die. Julian laughed manically and began to chant loudly from the book, a dissonant, magical sound filling the air. Soon Cole and the red-clad ghost appeared in the basement, encased in a green orb of light. The red ghost's face was ferocious. Her nails grew long, and she tried to lunge at Julian, but it was no use. The mysterious runes flew forward and bound her tightly. Julian lit a paper effigy next to the altar. The smoke from the burning paper coalesced into a black, shadowy figure that flew at the ghost, attacking her violently. The ghost grew weaker and weaker, her form becoming more transparent until she and the shadow both dissipated. Cole watched the ghost vanish without any concern. He stared at Julian with contempt and said, "All that effort for nothing." Then, with a wave of his hand, the green orb and the runes shattered and disappeared. How did the soul-trapping ward fail? Julian threw down his book in shock. At that moment, I ripped the veil from my head and threw it onto Julian, giving Cole a knowing look. Cole began to chant. The veil instantly wrapped around Julian, tightening with every word of the spell. Julian started chanting his own counter-spell, but it was useless. The veil kept squeezing, and the sound of his bones cracking filled the air. Julian's eyes filled with venom as he glared at me. "You did this. You bitch. I'll haunt you even as a ghost." I pointed at him and burst out laughing. "You bastard. You killed Serena, and you were going to kill me too. Pathetic." He stared in disbelief but never got the chance to speak again. The veil crushed him into a pile of mangled flesh and blood. Julian was dead. With that done, Cole turned to look at me. But this time, I wasn't looking at his simple, honest face. I was looking at a ghostly visage covered in oozing pus. Just like Tia when she died. "I like this body of yours." Ha ha. Cole's true nature was revealed. He dropped the act of being a reaper and lunged at me. But I wasn't fazed. I calmly turned my back to him and said nonchalantly, "You really are a novice. You couldn't even tell that I'm the ghost. Are you sure you want to possess this vengeful corpse?" Ha ha. I spun around, transforming into a monstrous corpse, my body covered in lividity spots and bloated like a giant. My long tongue lolled out as I lunged at Cole. Cole was terrified. You. The mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind it. "This was all your setup." He scrambled away, chanting spells as he fled, but all his talismans just flickered and turned to ash. "Don't bother struggling. I tampered with all your talismans," I taunted, chasing him like a cat playing with a mouse. After watching him try and fail with every trick he knew, I decided I'd had enough fun. I chanted a new spell. The basement blazed with light as a massive green orb shot toward Cole, trapping him in place. "I didn't completely destroy the soul-trapping ward," I explained. That dragon bone pendant was made from your own bones, wasn't it? You were going to use it for your soul swap. I just used it to power the ward instead. Ha. Cole's face went pale. He gave up struggling and warned me that his grandmother wouldn't let me get away with this. I was done talking. I formed a seal with my hands, and a vortex of blood-red clouds began to spin above the villa. Soul-devouring ritual, begin. Instantly, 2 beams of red light shot down from the clouds, enveloping both me and Cole. It was time for me to consume him and sustain my life. Just then, Serena's soul emerged from the bedroom and flew toward the eye of the storm in the sky. Sister, I know life is hard when you have to feed on souls. Let me, a soul of purine, help you be reborn. She ignored my protests and flew resolutely into the sky. The next morning, I woke up on the lawn. Sunlight warmed my skin, a sensation I hadn't felt in a very, very long time. I breathed in the fresh air, felt the soft grass beneath my fingers. Everything was so full of life. Hello world. My name is Serena. Epilogue. Chloe's story part 1. I am a century-old vengeful corpse. Because I possessed a body of pure solar energy and life, I was reanimated after death. Over the long years, I forgot who I once was. I sustained myself by devouring souls. To make it easier to find prey, I took the name Chloe and became a nightclub singer. All those sleazy guys who tried to pick me up had their souls drained, leaving them as dried-out husks. But Julian was different. I could sense a soul of extreme energy around him. If I could devour it, I had a chance to become fully human again. So I used dark arts to attract his attention. I never expected that he also practiced mystical arts and had already seen through me. Knowing I was an ancient corpse, he was a necromancer, and he wanted to refine me into a powerful corpse king under his command. By the time I discovered his plan, it was too late to escape. That's when Cole appeared. He was a spirit who cultivated his power by sacrificing the souls of young women. He was the one who killed Tia, and he wanted my solar body to resurrect himself. But his powers were weak. He couldn't even tell I was a vengeful corpse and tried to trick me with that ridiculous story about ash soup. By a stroke of luck, I was able to communicate with Serena's soul through the underworld mirror. She was Julian's first love. They had been deeply in love, but she tried to leave him when she discovered his necromancy. Unwilling to let her go, Julian killed her, intending to turn her into an obedient corpse servant. But the ritual failed. Unwilling to let her reincarnate, Julian trapped her soul with the memorial shrine. She could never move on. So we made a plan together. Let the scumbag man and the scumbag ghost both go to hell. Chloe's story part 2. I was reborn. I became completely human. And with the fusion of the extreme yin and yang souls, I somehow unlocked the ability to see ghosts. This inspired me to become a master of the spirit world, to fight for justice and vanquish evil. But soon, I was on the run again. I can feel a powerful presence, a shadow hunting me across the country. I know who it is. It's Cole's grandmother, the incredibly powerful shaman, who is determined to avenge her grandson. But that's not all. I also want to investigate my own past, the life I had before I became a corpse. My intuition tells me that my past holds its own story of love and hate, just waiting to be uncovered.